You think your biggest problem is what's happening around you or to you right now, but it's not. Your biggest problem is that when the pressure hits, you become the same person you swore you'd never be. And Genesis 26 is a brutal example of how quickly fear can make a believer act like an unbeliever. Because this chapter starts with a problem, a famine. Again, not the first famine in Genesis, not the last. And immediately, we're supposed to notice something. Isaac is facing almost the exact same situation his father Abraham faced years earlier. And that's where the danger begins, because most people think they're different from the people who came before them. That is, until life punches them in the mouth. Then suddenly, they make the exact same mistakes. Isaac starts heading toward Egypt, which makes sense from a human perspective. There's food there, resources there, security there. But before he gets there, God stops him. And this matters because God tells Isaac not to run to Egypt. Stay where I tell you. Trust me, and I will bless you. Now think about that. A famine is happening. The land is struggling, and God says, stay anyway. Why? Because God's provision is not limited by circumstances. Most of us trust God when things make sense. The real test comes when obedience doesn't. Can you obey when the numbers don't work? Can you trust when the situation looks impossible? Can you stay when every instinct says run? This is where Genesis 26 starts getting uncomfortable, because Isaac stays. And God blesses him. His crops explode. His flock multiplies. His wealth increases. His influence grows. In fact, he becomes so successful that the Philistines become jealous. And now the chapter shifts, because blessing creates attention, and attention creates opposition. The Philistines begin filling the wells Abraham had dug earlier, years earlier. Now, that might not sound like a big deal to us, but in the ancient world, a well was life. No water meant no survival. No livestock. No future. No inheritance. They're not just blocking dirt holes. They're attacking Isaac's future. And yet, before we get there, Isaac makes a terrible decision. The exact same decision Abraham made. Twice. Fear. Again. When the people ask about Rebekah, Isaac lies. He says, she is my sister. Not again. But he says it anyway. He says she's his sister because he's afraid they'll kill him to take her. I mean, does this sound familiar? It should. Abraham did the same thing. This is one of those moments that should bother us because Isaac grew up hearing these stories. He knew what happened. He knew the consequences, and yet he repeated it anyway. Have you ever done that? Have you ever watched someone else's mistake, understood why it was wrong, and then walked right into doing it yourself? That is humanity. We don't just inherit genes. We inherit patterns, fears, weaknesses, blind spots. And unless we confront them, we repeat them. Eventually, the king, Abimelech, discovers the truth. Isaac is exposed. The lie collapses. And once again, God protects the promise despite human failure. Don't miss that. God's covenant survives Isaac's stupidity, just like it survived Abraham's, just like it survives yours. Not because sin doesn't matter, but because God's faithfulness is bigger than our failures. That's one of the major themes running underneath this entire chapter. Then comes one of the most fascinating parts of Genesis 26, the wells. Over and over, Isaac digs a well, someone fights over it, he moves, he digs another, someone fights over that one, he moves again, digs another dispute, another conflict. And if you're reading quickly, you'll miss the lesson, because this isn't really about water. It's about trust. Most people spend their lives fighting for every inch, every argument, every insult, every offense, every perceived injustice. Isaac doesn't. He just keeps moving. He keeps digging. He keeps trusting. And eventually, he reaches a place where no one contests the well. And he names it Rehoboth, meaning room or broad places, because God has made room for him. This is where it changes, because sometimes victory isn't winning the fight. Sometimes victory is trusting God enough to not fight. That's hard for proud people, hard for angry people, hard for people who need the last word. How many battles are you fighting that God never asked you to fight? How much energy are you wasting defending yourself when God is perfectly capable of defending you? That's a painful question, because most of us don't trust God enough to just let go. Then comes the line that changes everything. This is the line that changes all of it. Genesis 26:24. God says, "Fear not, for I am with you." Fear not. Not because the famine disappeared, not because the enemies disappeared, not because life became easy. Fear not, because God is with him. That is the foundation, not circumstances, presence. And the moment Isaac receives that promise, he builds an altar. He worships. He calls upon the Lord, and he settles there. Notice the order. God speaks, Isaac worships, then he builds. Most people reverse it. They build first, then ask God to bless it. Isaac responds to God's presence before pursuing success. And that's a lesson modern people desperately need, because we've become experts at building things, businesses, careers, platforms, plans, dreams. But are we building altars or only building kingdoms? What does Genesis 26 reveal about God? God is faithful. Even when his people are fearful, God keeps his promises. Even when his people stumble, God provides. God protects. God makes room. We repeat old mistakes. People repeat old mistakes. We let fear drive decisions. We struggle to trust. And we often fight battles God never told us to fight. So where are you in this chapter? Are you standing in a famine? Running toward Egypt? Repeating old pattern? Fighting over a well? Or are you finally learning to trust the God who says, "Fear not, for I am with you"? Because that promise wasn't just for Isaac. The question is whether you'll believe it. May the truth set us all free.